We're glad you're here. As we say every month, we want to make this useful to you. And so if you have topics that you would like us to discuss in the months to come, just let either Tiffany or I know, and we'll try to include those in the later months. We value your time, and we want to make sure this is valuable to you. So I'm going to be very short tonight. I want to do just one thing, and that is ask you, you don't have to raise your hand because I don't want anybody to be embarrassed, but how many of you on this call are recurring donors? And if the answer is no, then for goodness sakes, go out there and join us as a recurring donor. We want everybody to be one. As of this morning, we had 151 officially, which I know means that we have about 170 or so. But we would like to have a whole lot more because recurring donors basically are the bottom line supporters of the CART Fund. I mean, we like and just adore big checks, but we know that the real support comes from those folks who routinely and regularly commit dollars to the CART Fund. And so we appreciate that. And if you're already one, thank you so much. And so I'll turn it back over to Tiffany.
Thank you, Rod. Every month we try to have a few guest speakers that have topics that are relevant to us, both as Rotarians and as volunteers for CART. And so tonight's agenda is no different. Later in the evening, you're going to hear from Terry Weaver, who is our Vice President of Technology, and he's going to be focusing on one specific report in the donor portal that will help you all, especially our district chairs, but everyone in general, to learn a little bit more about some of the reports that you can use there. But first, our guest speaker tonight is an expert on public speaking and leadership and engagement. He is a member of the Rotary Club of Charlotte International in District 7680 and has experience with Dale Carnegie and so many other internationally recognized organizations. And I thought it would be helpful for us to hear from him tonight a few tips and tricks that we might find helpful as we go out and do public speaking and presentations and we're interacting with Rotary clubs. Obviously, we all know what our particular skill sets are, and some of us are better public speakers than others. Some of us are better at paperwork or grants or strategic planning, but anyone can overcome their fear of public speaking with a little experience and a little practice, and you can be a great public speaker to share the message that we know you all have. So I've asked Chris Arline to join us tonight and to have a little presentation about what we might take away from his experience in public speaking. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Tiffany, I appreciate you giving me this time. And folks, I appreciate you all letting me be here as well, too. And again, if you don't like what I say, just don't throw anything. I have seen a lot of rough crowds and things happen. And I'm not naive enough to think that if William doesn't like this presentation, he still can't get something to Pineville, North Carolina right now. So I'm going to try to honor you by not causing you to want to do that. My name's Chris. As Tiffany mentioned, I'm a member of Charlotte International and do some other things with Rotary. I've worked with Dale Carnegie and have since about 2013. I actually took courses myself way back in like early 2000s. Who here is familiar with Dale Carnegie or know anything about it? If so, hands up. Great. Okay. Y'all have a read. That makes my job a lot easier. To give you a little background on me, though, I'm originally from Southern West Virginia. And I've lived in West Virginia, North Carolina, Texas, Ohio briefly, and DC briefly, like where I'm at right now. And don't think I'm moving because of the skies. And when I say that, I'm talking about middle of November. If you still can't tell, it's wintertime because it's so blue. Some other places I've lived, that's not the case. So here's the deal. We're going to get into some of this stuff regarding CART. And to be perfectly honest, I'm probably going to screw a lot of things up right now because I'm going to ask everybody to do something that may not be customary when we have guest speakers. This is going to be a two-way conversation. So be ready to come off of mute because that's going to be very important. I think I understand CART. I've been a president of my club, so I think I get it. My understanding is that you all go out and speak to Rotarians about contributing to CART. Is that the case? If so, give me a thumbs up. Okay, so I'm going to now start going person by person. First person I'm going to go to, I'm going to ask for Tom. Tom, when you're out talking to people about CART, Rotarians, clubs, what's your goal? What do you really want to have happen after you talk to them?
I want them to understand that there's an independent organization that raises money for research, independent of government agencies and bureaucrats, that we can make a difference And I have given presentations so far to the Lions Club. I've got the Kiwanis Club schedule, and I got the American Legion schedule, because Alzheimer's doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care what
No,
what
that's true.
what color, what race, what gender.
Mhm.
It doesn't discriminate.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because you're right. I'm actually thinking right now back to my great grandmother, who, when she passed, had Alzheimer's for the last number of years. And you're right, there's no respect of persons from that standpoint. But you mentioned you want people to understand. I'm going to push a little bit. Do you want them to understand, or do you want them to do something?
Well, through understanding, then they buy in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm looking for, the buy-in.
Yeah.
You know, I use the PowerPoint presentation as part of the presentation, but it's not all of the presentation that I do. And
Yep.
I never met a microphone I didn't like, so I'm not afraid of public speaking.
Okay.
And
So
good
so
result.
when they buy in, what do you want them to do after that? They buy in. What do you want them to do?
Cash.
There you go. There you go. We want people to take out their checkbook, to jump online, to give cash, however it's set up, to be able to contribute to the CART fund. There's a bunch of ways that we can do that. There's PowerPoint presentations. We can do that. We can talk. We can engage with folks. I'm going to share a couple things that I think works really well in getting folks to move. The same type of thing that Tom's getting folks to do, the same thing that Larry's getting folks to do. We want to make this easy. I want to make it as easy as Heather makes it. That's the whole point. So here's the thing. A lot of the times it has to do with how we communicate with people. Anybody know how many different ways we can communicate with folks? And obviously there's our words, but there's some others. How else can we communicate with people? What are you thinking, Eldon? You're on mute.
Body language is
We
one.
have social media. That's the big thing now. I think when
Yep.
I find people that are very much interested in
Yep.
whether we're on Facebook, whether we're on
Yeah.
X,
Mhm.
I think that's very important today. That's the
Yep.
new. Well, I did a recent class in ROI, and it turns out that the younger people are the ones that use social media, and the older folks like me do not.
Hmm.
So what's the purpose? We have to now use social media more and more, because
Yep.
the young people are going to be the future of our organization.
Yep. You know, so we've heard some things about social media, body language. Down in chat, we've got music. Yeah, there's some things that we can do with music and personal conversations. For our purposes today, kind of what we're talking about is being in front of that group of people face to face, so we have the ability to chat with them. And in those situations, really there's three ways we can communicate. There's the words we say, there's our vocal tone, and really the high highs and low lows, voice modulation. That's power with our voice, or sometimes being quiet, but never being monotone. And then then the last way, as Tom mentioned, body language. Okay, three ways: voice, vocal tone, our words, and body language. And then the question is, hey, what do people pay the most attention to? There's a guy who's a professor in California. His name's Albert Maribin. And his whole thing was trying to figure out, when people are chatting and we're not aligned, like our words don't match our voice and doesn't match our body language, what do people pick up on first? What do you think's most important? In terms of when things are off a little bit, what are people watching more than anything else?
Body language.
Okay.
Body language.
Yeah. Body language is at 55%. Words are at 7. Words are 7. When things are off a little bit, people go to body language first. So when we give presentations, or better yet, not when we give presentations, but when you've watched presentations from other people, do we see a lot of body language? Do we see a lot of vocal tone? William says yes. Good. Good. What about you, Glenda? When you see presentations, do you see a lot of body language and a lot of vocal tone?
Yes, for sure.
Good. Good. Those are presentations we're going to pay most attention to. We're going to lock in, and we're going to get the type of thing that Tom was talking about in terms of being able to get that buy-in. Now, for some people, being able to do those things naturally, pretty easy. Sometimes it's the way we were brought up in our family, taught a lot with our hands, a lot of engagement. Some of us, like me, that wasn't natural. I gave presentations one way. I was like in a box. Give me a podium, I can stand behind it, I can talk to people, and I can reason with them. It gets about 20% of the population. So if we're really trying to pull people in, being able to use body language effectively and vocal tone effectively is going to give us the greatest gain. That's when people were coming in and saying later that, hey, look, I was glad that I went there and I listened to them, because most presentations based off of what the Wall Street Journal says are not engaging. We can become engaging by just incorporating those three things easily. Now, what's the easiest way, in your opinion, to bring body language and vocal tone to the table when we're giving presentations? What do you think is the easiest way to do that?
I would say that if you are serious about your subject and you have buy-in yourself and you're enthusiastic, that sells.
Yeah, because people can see that, they can smell it. If somebody really curious what they're talking about, that kind of comes through. So that's one way. Actually buy in ourselves. Any other ways?
You know, Chris, I was a headhunter for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's different about that is you had to use audio body language, which is what you're talking about, modulations of tone and inflection.
Yep.
And so I find that having done that for 10 years, I do that naturally when I'm speaking to a group.
Mm-hmm.
That makes them feel the connection, the body language.
Yeah, because when we do that, we start conveying emotions, and it elicits emotions within other people. It's kind of like we know when we like somebody, or we know we like something or we didn't like something. That's a guttural feeling. Doing those types of things makes it simple for folks to do, to get that. But we got to bring it to the table. One of the things that we recommend in terms of being able to draw emotions out and to make it easy for ourselves, i.e. making it easy for the audience, is to tell stories. I mean, every last one of us has a presentation. We can use that. I'm not suggesting that we don't. But if we really want to get people and we really want to get buy-in, share a story. Help them to understand a situation that we've seen. Because when we start referencing something that we saw, something that happened to someone that was really good, someone who was helped out, all of a sudden, we're not just trying to refer to what's on the page or was on the PowerPoint. We start telling them something that we knew. And when we do that, all of a sudden that vocal tone changes. Our body language switches immediately. We don't have to pretend at all. It just happens. And in fact, I'll prove it to you. There is this one tool we like to use called the magic formula that helps to get buy-in with people. And it's very simple. It's telling a story, but we don't just tell the story. We're trying to get them to do something. So it's like we tell the story, then we, at the end of the story, say, hey, so based off of my story, what I'm suggesting you do is this. And if you do this, this is what you're going to get. It's pretty simple. And we're going to get an example of it, but I'm not going to give it. Somebody else is. And here's how we're going to figure that out. This is full participation, everybody, including those who are off camera. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and if you identify with any of these, please raise your hand, okay? So, if you've ever been in a car accident at any time in the past, hands up. Okay, now, second question. If you've ever been the individual that, like me, caused a car accident, hands back up. Only two? I'm not buying that, but we're going to grab Kevin. I didn't know the CART people didn't tell the truth, but we'll get back to this in a second. Now, here's the deal. All I'm going to do is ask some questions, and I want everybody to watch Kevin and watch how this goes down. Kevin, have you and I ever talked about this before?
I don't think we've talked about this particular example, but we have talked many, many times about communication. Full disclosure, Chris is my neighbor. He lives 2 doors down from me.
And he's not had me kicked out yet, thank goodness. Okay. But we've never talked about this magic formula thing either, right?
No.
Okay. Everybody watch this. This is a piece of cake. Remember, Story, action, benefit. And oh yeah, by the way, spoiler alert. The only reason why Kevin's going to share this with you is that he didn't want you to get into an accident. That's it. All right. But watch him. Okay, Kevin. So tell us a little bit about this accident. What happened?
Well, it was actually, believe it or not, when I was on the police department. And
Okay.
I was involved in a car chase.
Okay.
I was the one doing the chasing, not being chased.
Oh.
So
Okay.
But as we were pursuing this individual, we lost control. I lost control of the car, and we ended up hitting a parked vehicle. It was clearly my fault.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So when you're a police officer and you run into something,
Not good.
how does that work? I mean, there was damage to the car, right?
Oh yeah,
Okay, got it. So you had to go have some conversation with superiors. How did that go?
not well.
Ah, okay. What about insurance? I'm sure that you were insured through the police department, but did that impact insurance rates at all?
No, it was, the city had its own policy, so we were covered from that regard. But there
Okay.
were immediate consequences for
Like what?
like walking a beat for 30 days.
Ooh. Now, this was a police chase. You were involved with the activity of your job. Why do you think that accident happened? What was the problem?
Probably excessive speed
Oh.
and ineffective brakes and being young and reckless and probably not thinking through what was going on.
Okay.
All of that.
Got it. Got it. Okay, everybody, we're going to put a pin in that. That was the story. That's the story. Now, Kevin, based off of your story, what do you want us to do or not do when we're driving? Just one thing.
Be safe. Be safe. And that involves a number of things, obviously. Obeying speed signs, being aware of what's going on around you in case there are other officers out there that are pursuing vehicles. I mean, you just have to be safe.
And if we do that, Kevin, what are we going to get?
You're going to be able to go home or go to work or go to that Rotary meeting and enjoy the rest of your day.
Got it. Kevin, thank you. Let's give him a hand, folks. Now, there was no prep, and we put him on the spot. Now, could you see emotion in Kevin when he was recounting that story? Did he seem authentic? Yeah. These are the type of things that people pay attention to, that gets their attention. This can go from being in a Rotary meeting that's flat as could be, they're not paying attention to squat, and then all of a sudden they light up because of the story. So we can take the same premise of what Kevin did, but just apply it into a different situation. We can do this easy with CART Fund. We can come off the page and off of the numbers before we make the ask and recount a story about someone that we know, something that we've seen, to help people really get it. All of a sudden that emotion is going to kick in, and people will go with us where they would not go with other people who just simply go in and ask and say, hey, you should do this because it's a good idea. It is, but they've heard that 5,000 times from 10,000 people. When we attach a story to it and it's real, that emotion is going to come through and it's going to make it easy for them to listen and buy in. I'll give you one final example before I get out of here. And this is not a CART story, but it is a medical story. So stay with me. So there I was back in 2017 at the hospital, Pineville. And I'm there because my mother-in-law, this is her exit. We know within the week that she's going to pass away. Doctors have talked to us. We get it. My wife knew, her brother was already here. That day, there was another individual there. It was one of my wife's cousins. This gentleman was a former radiologist. And when he got into town that night, the night before, his head was full of steam, thinking that the doctors could not have gotten this right. They've missed something. He knows because he's a doctor. And he couldn't wait to get to the hospital that next day to tell them, after looking at charts, what they needed to take a look at, because he just wasn't going to accept it. Now, my wife, my brother knew, and he's going to have to go through his own type of grief. Now, again, we really don't want to irritate doctors that's taking care of folks, especially at that stage in life. So I'm there, and I watch one of the doctors, a palliative care doc. engage with this particular cousin. Now, granted, he was walking up with a head full of steam, starting to ask a lot of questions, ready to point fingers, telling them how they were wrong. And within a very short period of time, I watched this doctor, licensed professional, knows her stuff, smart as day is long, listen to him, look him dead straight in the eyes, and slowly start walking him back to where she gave him the information that he needed, but she did it in a way that he could listen. And she cared enough because she understood what was happening. She got the grief and treated him accordingly. As she was doing that, I watched the look on his face change. No anger, sadness without question, but he got it. And he was able to kind of calm, accept it, and start doing the things that were necessary for him and the family rather than wanting to be aggressive toward any of the doctors. Now, I've known doctors, I've got family members that soon will be doctors, and they're all smart. But this particular doc and everybody else that we dealt with medical professionals at that time frame, treated the family with care. And I still remember it today. It made a major, major, major difference. So based off of my story, unfortunately, all of us will have family members in similar situations, whether or not if it's end of life or just something that's happened that needs attention. When we find ourselves dealing with medical professionals that are just not only super smart, but also empathetic and caring, make sure to thank them, because not every family will. And if you do, you'll make it easier for them to do that for the next 5 and 10 people they will see that week. So folks, I simply say this to tell you all, when you're encountering people, asking them to do something that's good, something that helps people, something that you've watched help people in the past, and maybe even a family member, give them the presentation, but make it easy for them to listen. If you have a story that you can share with them before you ask them to do anything, you're going to get them to lean in, pay attention, and a much, much, much higher chance of buy-in, because they'll remember what you said, not the argument, but the emotion. They'll chime in on that. Hey, I did think I did go a little bit past 15 minutes, Tiffany. I know there may have been some extra time, but does anybody have any questions in general about tips, tricks, things that could be useful?
You know, in my presentation, I start off with a story.
Good.
I tell
Good.
a story about 50 years ago, my father's sister came down with Alzheimer's, and there was a couple of years past when my father died. And me and my 2 younger brothers, who are since deceased, went to see her in a nursing home. I want you to picture this. They had her in a sling chair, her head up at one end, her feet at the other. And she was writhing and kicking and foaming at the mouth. So it was end stage Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And so I touched her on the shoulder. And I said, Mary, how are you doing? Now, I'm Catholic, she's Catholic, and she went like this. Thought I was my father because I look like him. So that's the story I lead off with.
Wow.
End stage Alzheimer's, and I've seen a lot of my clients have it, and my mother-in-law had it for 15 years. So I tell those stories before I go into the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's so strong, because again, people hear folks trying to tell them things all of the time. And they hear people telling you need to do this. And people can be right, but folks tune out so fast it's not even funny. But when we have a story, and your story doesn't have to be Tom's. Tom's has a great story that he understands. He was there, he saw it. Great story for him. Don't tell his story. Tell yours. You either have had a family member, know someone in your community, or the fact of being in CART, you know this stuff. Share that. William, what are you thinking?
My wife and I went around to about 50 Rotary clubs giving presentations about CART, and we focused on the victims and the impact of Alzheimer's on the victims. In 2018, suddenly we became a caregiver or a family member. And all of a sudden, all the emotional, the psychological, the financial impact just crashed down on us like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. And so I opened by telling that story, looking at every member in the club and say, each and every one of you is a potential caregiver unless we stop it. And that's my story.
That's strong. That is strong. And they're not expecting that. They're not expecting any of this stuff. They're expecting a presentation and somebody walk through charts and this, that, and the other thing, and raising money. And yes, that's true. But when they hear your story, it changes everything. You'll take somebody who will make a decision on the spot from a guttural response because you're willing to share.
This was great, Chris. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much. It's a great topic for all of us. And Chris, we really appreciate your support of CART.
Do know this. The stuff that you all are doing, I'm sure you know this and have heard this 1,000 times, does matter. Each and every time you're having a conversation, you're talking with those folks, it gives them the opportunity to become part of something much, much, much bigger. So in those times when you see that individual that doesn't look like they're engaged, there's probably 100 that you don't know that are. And when they get going, especially not only what they do this year, but every year, that's an impact, big time. So thank you for what you're doing.
We appreciate having him here tonight. As we mentioned, every month we try to have 2 to 3 different topics that we think will help you in your roles as either a district or club chair or a CART advocate, because we know that we have folks who join us every month who maybe don't even have CART in their districts yet, but solely in their clubs, and we want them to help us grow as well. And that is happening all over the country, folks, and we are so grateful to each and every one of you. Many of you are district chairs on this call tonight. In fact, I think most everyone is. And you guys are learning as we go with the online donor portal. And we are very fortunate to have Terry Weaver, who has served as our Vice President of Technology, helped with the programming and the creation of our portal, and is very involved still to this day with helping us continue to update it and make changes and make improvements. And we're excited that Rod and I have been working with Terry a lot lately. We have some new pages that are going to be rolling out in the near future, so stay tuned for that as well. But we asked Terry to join us tonight to focus on maybe one report that he can share with you from the portal that will help you do your job, things that will help you to know what's going on in your district or around your division. And so, Terry, we are grateful. We know you had another meeting earlier tonight. We are so grateful that you're here.
I remind some of you that have been at this a while of the old days. And the old days were when district CART chairs, if you wanted to know what was happening in your district, if you wanted to know how you were doing with CART, you had to build your own scorekeeping mechanism, build your own bookkeeping mechanism to keep track of that. So when we went into this concept of an online contribution portal, it seemed to me that a big element of that, a big part of the value proposition would be that you could get those reports yourself, and that a machine in the background would be putting them together and you didn't have to. And indeed, that's proved out. So tonight, what I wanted to do is give you a little bit more in-depth look at one of the reports available to you in the CART portal. Now, that being said, you know, the more granular detail a report provides, the more daunting it is to the reader to make sense of it. And as always, we try to keep that in mind in any kind of report design. But the fact is that every now and then, you really need a granular report that has all kinds of detail in it, because that's where the problem is at the detail level, or that's where the missing link is in terms of information. Did somebody's contribution get booked? This kind of thing. So you need to go there when you need to go there. But the report I'm talking about is called the Contribution History Report. And what I wanted to do, it is the most granular report in CART. It was originally an admin function only, and then we sort of domesticated it and made it available to you as district CART chairs. So you can really paw through what happened in your district or in a given club or with a given contributor and answer questions, solve problems, those types of things, and really understand how things are going in your districts and in the individual clubs. So I'll give you a quick tour of this, and then we'll take some questions.
I'd like to share with you today some more ideas on how you can use the reports in the CART portal. Now, all the reports are available under this link, Reports. Last month, we took a look at the roll-up reports. The CART Club Management Report. That's where you get roll-ups of CART contributions year-to-date for clubs, and the district. It also provides last year's contribution at exactly the same date and last year's contributions in total. Of course, if you're a district CART chair, you can switch to the All Clubs view and see a roll-up of all of your clubs. The goal setting report is a good way to see if clubs have set CART goals and what those goals might be. Today I'd like to focus on what I'd call a utility report, the club contribution history. And what I mean by utility is that it provides you a lot of tools to slice and dice the data to get exactly what you're looking for. Now, it opens to your own club and your own district. One of your options as a district administrator, of course, is an all clubs view in this report as well. That provides you a complete transaction log. Every activity, every contribution made to the portal over a default time window. By default, I mean that when it opens, it starts on July 1st and runs through the current date. Now, start and end dates can be really handy, particularly if you're looking for something, or perhaps someone's running, say, a match offer over a given period of time. In that case, you can select exactly the date you want to start, say August 1st, and exactly the date you want to end, let's say August 31st. So if someone has agreed to match contributions for the month of August across the district, you have everything you need. You notice a lot of columns: the contributor name, the club name, the type of contribution, whether it's personal or club or district. Now, scrolling down a little bit, you get the sum total of all those contributions. You also have the option in this report, like most every report in the CART portal, of an export to an Excel spreadsheet. Now, if you have some Excel skills, you can further search, sort, and customize the report to exactly the data you're looking for. Here you'll notice a drop-down where you can search for a contribution by a specific contributor. And below that is a handy field of radio buttons where you can filter for different types of contributions, say only personal contributions. The club name sort is particularly helpful. And then finally, you can add groupings. So if you, for example, group by club name, what it does is provide you a subtotal by club all the way down the page. I think you can see what I mean by utility report. This is as handy as a pair of pliers, and like a pair of pliers, it can be used for a lot of different purposes. Now, the other reports, such as the club management report, just roll things up into one line per club, but that's very useful in the big picture, such as if you're going out preparing to visit a club. But sometimes you simply need to dig in and look at specific transaction details. That's what the contribution history report provides.
Happy to take questions.
Here's what I want an answer for. If I collect funds from my own club and I want to separate my personal from the rest, do I enter it twice in, one as a personal and one as a club? Or how does that work? I put my name up above as the contributor, I guess, but that only means for the club or the person. How can I separate my personal within the club?
Good question. Now, this was fashioned greatly after the way the Rotary Foundation's portal works. So think about that. If you make a contribution to the Rotary Foundation, it credits your account, your Paul Harris Fellow status. It also rolls up into the club and it rolls up into the district. This works exactly the same way. So if it's your money, comes out of your pocket, or you write a check, you click the personal contribution button. Now, that's not the default. The default is a club contribution, like we got it out of the buckets. But if you click personal contribution, and of course, if you're the person that's logged in, it would default to you. You could do that on behalf of somebody else also as an administrator, if that were the case. So when you make a personal contribution, it will appear in all the roll-ups. The point is that we know that it was your money, not just some funds from a club or a project or whatever, that you happen to be the person that entered them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it answers the question, do I do that twice then? I get $100 from the other club members and I have 50 of my own. So
that would be two entries.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
That'd be a personal entry for your 50 and a club entry for the 100.
And my personal is also gets credited to the club. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Terry, Suzanne's question was about the recurring donor report. Can you remind folks where to find that?
Sure, I can. I think the report that you're probably talking about is those people signed up to do a recurring contribution, and that's called the recurring EFT subscription. Keyword is subscription, recurring EFT subscription report. And what this does, I'll shrink it down a little bit so you can see it. What this does is list people simply alphabetically, the type of contribution, the amount, and the period, the interval. So whatever that person has set up as their contribution interval, their contribution amount, that is in this report, you can of course search on an individual, but like other parts of the CART portal, you can also sort things, for example, by district, and you can sort things by club name. So depending on what you're looking for, could be very easy to find if you use those sorts. Does that cover what you're looking for?
She says it does. Thank you.
I will mention that we don't have a way for a user to come because of the security between the CART portal and the transaction processor. There isn't a way to go back in there and change one of those recurring transactions after it's set up. So if someone wants to change the credit card, or something happened to the bank account, or something different happens, or they want to change the amount, they want to change the frequency, you can just delete the existing contribution, let them re-enter it, whatever they'd like it to be, and then we'll, of course, not take that former contribution anymore, and we'll take the new one. But that does require intervention. Now you can do that, or CART support can do that, and Michelle knows how to do those. As district CART chairs, I'm guessing you are still on occasion getting a check, either from a cyber challenged club, or a check that we can't handle with electronic funds transfer, like say from a Schwab IRA or something like that. And everybody understands that in those cases, you go ahead and deposit the check to the CART bank account, and then all you're doing in the portal is making a record entry. That's what we call a manual contribution. No money moves. There's no account number, no credit card. It's just accounting for a check that you put in the bank, so that on the other end, the CART treasurer can match that up with and of course it gives the person, the club, and the district credit for it as well. So that's where manual contributions come in. You're just squaring up the books, because we don't have a way to electronically process something like a Schwab IRA check.
Harry, let me ask you, I have been giving presentations to other than Rotary clubs, to other civic clubs, and to individuals at those clubs. I've directed them to the mycartfund.org portal. So when they go on there and they sign up on the portal, where does that money get credited to when they make a donation?
That goes to the ever popular all other division.
Okay.
And so it basically, there's a general public bucket that when we have something that's not designated to any club or any district, that's where those go. And you can see those in the roll-ups as well. Now, that means you will not, of course, see them in a club report or a district report. So those are in those divisional roll-ups that are down below the CART and district reports.
I think it would be nice if there was a way for those to be tagged to a specific club or district, since the person at the club or district went out and made that effort to get external donations to grow CART faster than just through Rotary Club members. Is that something that you can work on?
Which, I used to give like little sponsor pins and sometimes scarves. One year I was trying to grow membership, and I gave Rotary scarves to people who sponsored a new member. And rather than just giving the club the credit, is there a way that we can, like a member individually, special recognition for going out and getting that?
So Terry, can I jump in there for a second? Because I think Terry and Michelle and I have had this conversation a lot. And one of the things that is an option is that radio button that says in honor or in memory of. And so Tom Fitzgerald, every time you're out there speaking to Lions and Kiwanis and American Legion and VFW, if they go online and make a donation and say in honor of, and then they select either you or the Rotary Club of Kernersville or your district number, then not me, Michelle will manually move that to your club in your district so that you do get the credit for it after the fact. But we have to know it. And another great example of that is for people who do Facebook fundraisers for their birthdays or things. That is one check that comes in the mail to the Sumter PO box. So we have no way of knowing who it is, but we tell people if they will keep up with that and they'll screenshot their email from Benefit for Good or Benevity or whoever's running it at the time, that how much their money was, then we can watch for that, and we can, like Terry was talking about a manual entry earlier, Michelle and those can go back in and do that after a check has been deposited as well. But if we don't know about it, we don't know to move it. But the same happens with folks who do memorials. If someone passes away and people all over the country are making a donation in memory of someone because CART was selected, then we can go back after the fact. If that loved one was a spouse or a relative of a member of a club, we have ways to go back and credit those clubs so that they do get credit at the end. But Terry is correct. The majority of it is going to go into that all others division first. But if you tell us, and I say us, I really mean Michelle, because she's really good at fixing that. And she most of the time, she sees it and she investigates it and she corrects it before we even know it happened. And then she sends an email to Terry and to me that says it's already done. And I'm sorry that she's not here tonight to hear us bragging about her, but she has just landed in New York this afternoon for a few days vacation. But she will usually handle it way before we even know it was an issue. But that is something that you could certainly tell people to put in honor of, and your name or your club or whatever. And we tell people the same is true if your club is doing a fundraiser and you're collecting money on the QR code at an event, because the QR code is either on a printed table tent or it's on the side of the bucket. If they will in honor of your Rotary Club at that fundraiser, then we have a way to track it back to your club as well. So there are some tricks to that. In addition to what Terry said, they could just say that they're a Rotary member and then credit it to your club as well.
I would mention that if you come up with a true believer, I mean, somebody that really resonates with this and, for example, decides to become a recurring contributor, Michelle can tag that profile to a club as if they were in the club, and then everything they do subsequent, she can fix anything that's happened before, but everything going forward will be tagged right into the club just as if they started that way. So Michelle has godlike powers in the back end of this thing. Appreciate your service to CART, and thanks for your time and attention to this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So in the month of, this is September, at the October meeting of this CART Conversations call, we will have Lynn Kelly with us, who is with MemberMinder Pro, which is formerly known as DACDB. And she's going to be telling us how we create a committee in DACDB so that you can use one touch of a P-mail button to communicate with your club chairs throughout a district, or with all of your district chairs if you're a division director, and making sure that everyone understands the importance of creating a committee in DACDB and how to use that. So make sure you join us in October for that. She is going to be our guest speaker for that event. I do want to quickly remind you all that our online apparel store is open through tomorrow. So if you still need to order additional clothing that has the CART logo on it, that is going to be closing tomorrow, and those orders will be fulfilled by the end of September. So don't forget to go online and order that now, and then we will be reopening it again later this fall with additional attire. We are also working on a new site with some additional swag items that thanks to a new partnership we have with Civic Swag, and Erin Andrews is on the call tonight. So a big shout out to her. She's working on that, and she is donating a lot of other stuff for us to help with some social media presence and things like that. So she set us up a LinkedIn page. So if you are on LinkedIn, be sure to follow that and share from there as well. So a big thank you to Erin for that. Don't forget, this Thursday is our next lunch a la carte meeting. It is just coming up right around the corner with 2 meetings this week. Dr. Claudio Soto will be with us this Thursday. So please not only join us, but also share it. I'm pretty sure there's a Facebook event for it. I'll double check that tonight. And it's on our website. You can share that with people you know. If you register in advance, remember, it will send you a link reminder email the day of, and that's a great way to make sure you always have the link at the top of your inbox. And then the next one will be the first week in October with Dr. Paul Greer. And for those of you who maybe missed our last call, Dr. Greer is a new researcher for this year that was recently selected, but was unable to join us at the May meeting. So he is not one of our previous grant researchers. This will be the first time we've had a current researcher, but one of the recipients this year had to withdraw because of a move out of the country, and we do not fund research out of the United States. So her award was replaced by our research review panel, our scientific review panel, and they selected Dr. Paul Greer, and none of us have had an opportunity to hear from him yet. So he will be joining us on October the 4th, which is a Wednesday at lunch for our lunch a la carte. So we're really excited about all the meetings coming up. The speaker, like I said, in October is Lynn Kelly. In November, it will be our very own Tom Fitzgerald. He's going to be sharing some of his tips and tricks of how he is getting out there and getting scheduled with so many programs in his district. I know that we have a lot of district chairs who've been doing that for years and years, but we also have a lot of new folks that maybe haven't thought about it or know the best way to do it. So Tom's going to share his input and his experiences on that in the November meeting. This was a great meeting. So I appreciate all of you being here tonight.